Okay. Hello. I am Repsorp by name, and this is officially my first economics class. And the idea of this class is that I intend to tailor it to meet the academic needs of students that are either in secondary school, aspirants of university, and even university students. So please stay with me. Now, in today's class, being our first class, I'm going to be reintroducing the subject matter economics, and I'm going to be as brief and concise as possible. Now, when we say economics, it more or less has to do with how we relate to our everyday activities, and that is why the definition given by a particular economist, a British economist, Lionel Charles Robbins, goes ahead to touch down the definition of economics in a very, very elaborate way. But before I proceed, I'd like to give you certain key pointers, or better still, this class is tailored in a form of what key pointers. Now, first things first, according to what we have on the board here, it says that the father of economics is Adam Smith. Now, Adam Smith was a very, very great man and is widely known in various fields of study, and he happens to be the father of economics. But despite he being the father of economics, the definition that goes ahead to be widely accepted is a definition given by another economist by name, of which I made mention earlier, Professor Lionel C. Robbins, a British economist. Now, he went there to tell us that economics is a science. I think I have that on the board. Okay. He says that economics is a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between earned and scarce means which have alternative uses. And what does this mean? It means that the definition of economics is not just one or two. It is a very, very, very broad, analogy. And he's saying that what economics at first is a science. But like other sciences whereby you need to go to a laboratory, put on a test, a lab coat, test tube, and conduct experiments, we don't do that here. Now in economics, it is a science, but this time around, the subject matter is what? Human behavior. Meaning we are trying to see how human being behaves. Why are we doing that? We are trying to see how they behave as a relationship between two functional variables, which is ends and means. So because it is a science that studies human behavior, I can now categorize economics as a social science subject. Do you see that now? So now moving on, he said that we are studying human behavior. We are trying to study their behavior based on what? The relationship between two functional variables. And what are they? We have ends and means. Now according to the definition, it says ends and scarce means. So now first things first, the underlying word here, ends, is an archaic way of saying wants. And the underlying word here means is an archaic way of also saying what? Resources. So we're looking at the functional relationship between human wants and resources. And you can see attached to resources we have scarce means. So it means that what? The resources to satisfy human wants, they are actually limited. Now take an hypothetical scenario whereby you are asked to tabulate all of what you want for a certain rich man. Let's say Chief Teo Teo. And now on getting to Chief Teo Teo, he tells you, okay, tell me everything you want, I'm going to pay. Then you go ahead to scribble, and you go back to meet him and like, oh, is this all? Please just give me what? The estimate. I want to know how much it worth. Then you go back to your drawing board, you calculate, and you come back and say, excuse me, sir, the whole items on my list is totaling 5 million naira. The Chief Teo will exclaim, what the? Me, I don't have 5 million, no. I'll give you what? 1 million naira. Now let's stop there. According to our list in this story, it is worth what? 5 million naira. Then Chief Teo is willing to give you what? 1 million naira. So you see the difference? This is much, this is not enough. And that's the functional relationship between what? Ends and means. Wants and what? Resources. So I can as well as say that human wants, they are unlimited and they are insatiable. Whereas the resource to satisfy these wants, they are now what? Limited. They are not enough. They are scarce. So that being said, if this one is trajecting upward, this is not trajecting upward in the same manner. So I can more or less say that the mathematical relationship between these two functional variables is what? Inverse. The higher this, the lower this. And whatever way you try to interpret it. So now moving on, since we've come to establish that, the relationship between these two things is that one is always more than the other. It now means that what? There is a problem. And what is the problem? The problem is that we cannot satisfy everything here. And why can we not satisfy everything on our list? Because there is scarcity. So the fundamental problem or the basic problem of economics now happens to be what? Scarcity. Now remember that is why we are studying economics. Why? The relationship between these two things. We're now trying to see how human beings now tend to behave based on this relationship. So now based on this relationship, we've come to establish that there is scarcity. So as a rational human being, you are now what? Triggered with the what? with the what? The option of making a choice. And what do I mean? Let's go back to the story again. In my list, I gave a list that totaled 5 million naira, and I was given 1 million naira. So it means that what? I have to spend this 1 million naira wisely. And what does that mean? I'll most likely go back to my list and eliminate some certain things. I probably had written, oh, an iPhone 16 for myself, an iPhone 16 for my bestie, an ice cream, and all of that. But once I realized that, oh, I don't have enough, logically, the first thing I want to do is what? Eliminate certain things that are not really relevant. And I'll most likely what? Cross out the iPhone for my bestie. So I cross that out, I cross out a certain few other items, and I'm now able to satisfy some items. Now that now brings us to certain concepts. Now first things first, we establish that ends is an archaic way of saying wants, and it's also what? They are unlimited and also what? Insatiable, meaning they can never be fully satisfied. Then the next one means, which I also said is an archaic way of saying what? Resources, and they are limited. Remember the functional relationship. They are limited and also said to be what? Scarce. So now because of this scarcity, we as consumers, we now have to make choice. And now when we say we make choice, we're trying to make a rational choice, a choice that is sensible, that is logical. And economics is not concerned with the morality of a choice. So if you decide to buy gun, if it is rational, fine. I don't care if you are using it for good or bad thing. But the point is we're trying to make a rational choice. And how then do we do that? We now go back to our drawing board and we now have what is called a scale of preference. Now what is the scale of preference? A scale of preference is what? Ranking of what? Needs. Ranking of wants in their order of importance. Now go back to the analogy I gave you. iPhone 16 for me, iPhone 16 for my bestie, iPhone, okay, that's just to iPhone. Ice cream, shoes, sandals, clothing, and what have you. So now this time around, I'm going to rearrange those lists. I'm going to make the most important one come up front. And why am I doing that? So once I am spending, I'm trying to spend to satisfy the most important. And if I have extra after satisfying those, I cannot come down for the other ones. So scale of preference means that what? I am ranking my needs in their order of importance. Meaning that what? The most important one comes first and the least important one comes afterward. Now after we've done that, we now have what is now called the opportunity cost. Now opportunity cost is that item that is sacrificed in order to get other items. So let's say in my scale of preference, I'm giving another analogy this time around. I'm having bread, I'm having beans, I'm having egg, I'm having Pepsi, I'm having plantain, and I'm having pomo. So now based on the available resources, I am now able to buy bread, beans, egg, and Pepsi. So now that plantain and pomo, which I still have on my scale of preference, that I am not able to get, they are now called my what? Opportunity cost. Take note, we're not talking about the monetary value, we're talking about the item itself. So it is also called alternative foregone, but the best bet is that what? Put it in the back of your mind that when we say opportunity cost, we're talking about what? That item that is sacrificed in order to get other items. And that's that. Now moving on, you should be familiar with this popular Latin phrase that's used in economics because we might get to, come across it subsequently. It is called ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus is a Latin phrase that means all other things equal. When we come across it in, let's say, theory of demand, I will now elaborate further on what this particular phrase means and how exactly does it work in economics. The next one there, okay, I've talked about this. I said the relationship between ends and means, they are inverse, and that's that. And now before we call it a day, I'm going to look at what the branches of economics. Now economics, since we are trying to study human behavior, but you know that in a particular country there are thousands and millions of people. So how then do we do this? We now segregate them into two different branches. We have what's called the micro and we have what's called the macro. Now when we say micro, we're looking at it from smaller factions. We're studying human behavior in terms of individual aspects, household aspects, firms aspects. When we now say macro, we're looking at what the aggregate, the total, the economy as a whole, a country per se. Now in JAMB, WAEC, and what have you, there are so many topics outlined in your, should I say syllabus, should I say course outline, should I say scheme of work, whichever one works for you. There are so many topics in economics, but we can now use the logic of, micro is individual household firms, macro is economy as a whole. We can use that to segregate. And on the body, I've listed out a few topics. Topics like theory of demand, since it is focusing on consumers, individual, it falls under micro. Theory of supply is focusing on what? Suppliers, producers, firms. So falling under what? Micro. Theory of price determination, which is a merging of these two initial topics, or better still, is also called equilibrium, is also focusing on micro. In the same manner, we have theory of cost, theory of revenue, theory of consumer behavior, theory of production, market structure, business organizations, amongst many others. So when you see a particular topic and you cannot try to, properly digest and think, oh, this particular topic, is this centering on the economy or is it centering on smaller factions? As soon as you are able to clarify that, you can tell which branch it falls under. Now, list of topics under the macro, I've listed a few too. We have the national income accounting, we have unemployment, we have inflation, we have public finance, where we have budget, we have taxation, we have what's called theory of income determination. Topics like that you see in inflation, contractionary policy, expansionary policy, fiscal policies, and what have you. In as much as you can tell that this is relating to the economy, you can now confidently say, oh, this topic is coming from the macroeconomist. So we're going to call it a day here. I hope to see you in the next class, because once we get to the next class, we are going to be touching each topic one at a time. And the idea here is not just to teach, it's to ensure that you attain a level of mastery. I'll see you in the next class. Bye for now.